Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and in the name of his Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Messiah, their Messiah amongst us, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I would like to greet all of you in the greeting words of peace. We say them in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum, but in English, it's a weak translation, but in essence means may God's peace be upon you. And today, there's no better greeting than to greet your brother and your sister in the greeting words of peace, not the English language of hello, not the English language of hi, because many of us are trying to get high because we in a hell of a condition. Not the not the greetings of what's the other ones, what's going on, what's happening, all of these balls of confusion. So we want to greet each other in the greeting words of peace today of Assalamu alaikum. Today, we're going to be talking about a subject that many of us have seen the movie The Matrix. And in this movie, we know that a uh, character named Neo was awakened to the reality of the Matrix. And because of this awakening, he was able to see things as they really were, which was an absolute disaster, an absolute catastrophe. And so, what we want to do is we want to wake you up. We want to wake you up to this absolute disaster and catastrophe. And we are blessed by Allah to have on with us a brother who can absolutely fulfill that role. And I want to bring him on now, student minister Abdul Muhammad. Let me bring him on. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
And the last program that we had you on, you were going through a fight, a battle.
Yes, sir.
Can you update us on that progress?
Well, my brother, it's a fight that, as you talked about the Matrix, and we can go back as students of history, as well as students of Scripture, and whenever in history, whenever the people's longing and desire for change gave birth to the fulfiller, meaning the person that would bring about the change that they were longing for. Brother, let me stop. I'm sorry. I want to greet all of your viewers and listeners. And I don't know if I did this with the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum. And let everybody know that I'm a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is that great preacher of freedom, justice, and equality. And everything that I hope to share with you all this evening is a result of being a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So once again, and I do apologize because I should have started like this. I definitely want to thank you all for having me on the show. You've had me on before, and I'm always willing and willing to come on the show to share the truth with our people. But to go back to your question about this fight, whenever our people throughout history, any people brought about the one that was to deliver them from the oppression of whoever was oppressing them throughout the history of the world, those in power felt threatened when that person stood up, right? And as soon as God raised them up, then it became a fight between the one that God raised and the oppressor that's trying to keep the people in that position. We see this in Nat Turner, right? When Nat Turner stood up to fight in a slave rebellion, the slave owners and slave masters did not want, they wanted to quell that rebellion because they did not want the idea of freedom to spread to the minds of the other Black people. So any free thinking, free acting Black man or woman in a society that's based on white supremacy has to be punished and has to be ostracized. so that white supremacy can maintain its control over the minds of black people. So the same way the enemy responded to all of these freedom fighters, that's how they respond. We open the Bible and the Holy Quran, and you see a man like Moses, right? And Moses is coming to deliver his people from a wicked taskmaster in Pharaoh. And Pharaoh didn't open the door and welcome Moses in. Pharaoh opposed Moses from the day that God raised Moses until Egypt was destroyed by God. And I'm only saying that to say that's a long answer to say that we're in a fight, but I need your listeners to understand, because, you know, when your brother was in the public food system, Allah was blessing me to open the eyes of black children, right? To transform schools everywhere I went. And even though in Chicago, they say that they want this type of the schools transformed and they want our children to be educated, in reality, brother, they do not. They want our children to be indoctrinated. They want our children to be warehoused, because when I'm going to tell you what the minister told me, he said, brother, when I was on the phone with him one day, he said, brother, the Bible says, how can they know unless they have a teacher? And how can they have a teacher unless he be sent? Then he said, brother, God has made you a wonderful teacher. So now, if the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that because he sees that, then we already know what the enemy sees. They see an educator that is unafraid to educate black children and give them the knowledge of self that helps to transform their lives. And so the Chicago public school system sees anybody like that as a threat. So that is why we're in a fight. And this is why we're going to be victorious, because we're on the side of right. And through all of those examples that I gave you, every prophet, every messenger, every freedom fighter, because they were fighting for something that was bigger than themselves. They were fighting for a principle. And because the principle was bigger than the freedom fighter is always going to be victorious.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
Freedom, justice, and equality is what the universe itself is built on. So if you fight for freedom, then you will be victorious. If you fight for justice, if you fight for equality, if you fight for those things, the victory is already yours, because the universe that we live in is based on freedom, justice, and equality.
Beautiful, brother. And so I want you to, if you would, go just a little bit deeper into why it is that they don't want our children to be taught properly.
Well, brother, you know, there is a, and I'm trying to remember the law in physics, that, you know, one thing can occupy a place at one time, right? So two things can occupy the same place at the same time, right?
Right.
So with that in mind, if two things can occupy the same place at the same time, right? Keep that in mind. That's a law in physics, right? And then the Bible says that God would take the bottom rail, that he would make the tail the head, right? And that he would take the bottom rail and raise it to the top. So now what the Bible doesn't say, the Bible doesn't give you a step-by-step process of how this would happen. Jesus just says that the stone that the builders rejected. Now I need every black person that's listening to me to pause and ask yourself the question: are you the stone that the builders rejected? Whenever they get ready to build civilization, whenever they get ready to build nations, they don't come and find us. They don't come and look for us, because we're the stone that the builders rejected. The Bible calls us the rejected and the despised. You tried to move into an apartment complex. They pulled your credit, and your credit score was a 480. And they say you need a 720 just to move in. What are they telling you? The rejected. And it's not because your credit score. They just use the credit score because they can't discriminate against you because you black, right? So you went to get a job and they rejected you. We are the people that the Bible describes as the rejected and the despised. The stone that the builders rejected has now become the headstone of the corner. So now, if two things can occupy the same place at the same time, and the bottom rail is going to be raised to the top and the tail will be made the head, The question is, what is happening to the head? If the tail will be made the head and two things can occupy the same place at the same time, what is happening to the head? And it's right there in the Bible. I'm not going to talk about it right now. So, but how does that happen? The Bible doesn't tell you how in details. But what happens? God raises a messenger, and that messenger teaches the people the knowledge of self and the knowledge of God, which is one and the same. And he opens their eyes to who they really are. He says that every time you look at a black man, every time you look at a black woman, you're looking at God. So we're waiting for God. We're praying that God deliver us. But the God that is going to deliver us is within us. All we have to do is look in the mirror. So this man of God that comes at the end of Satan's world, he puts the human being face to face with God, and he puts the human being face to face with the devil, because there's no devil in the ground and there's no God in the sky. The God and the devil is within the human being. And what knowledge does, knowledge brings out what is within. The absence of knowledge causes the human being to degenerate and become what you would call a devil or uncivilized, or however you want to frame it. So now, what do you see in the public school system? Abdul Muhammad walks in. Our children have no knowledge of self, no discipline. The schools are like Cooley High on 10, right? On steroids, right?
Man.
The schools are like the fourth season of The Wire, if you watch The Wire, right? So now Abdul Muhammad walks in and he's able to transform the school. I didn't beat up no students to transform the school. I didn't kick them all out like our brother Joe Clark tried to do. I didn't hold him at gunpoint. But I worked with them and I taught them. And over time, I was able to transform these schools that were in horrible shape. And what happened when those in Chicago public schools saw that, then they saw me as a threat. And you know, when the enemy sees you as a threat, brother, it's only a matter of time before they're going to move on you. And this is what they did. And so this is, so the fight didn't start when they made their move. The fight started when I gave black children the knowledge of who they were. That's when the fight started. When I walked in the door and didn't have my pants sagging, and I came in there in a suit and bow tie every day, didn't even say nothing, just my presence. That's when the fight started. When I didn't bow down to white supremacy and do what other Negroes do to get elevated in the world of the enemy. When I didn't do that, that's when the fight started.
Man. So if you can, we're talking about the Matrix, right? And can you help us to understand how our condition as a people is similar to what we saw in the movie The Matrix? And I'll just go off the screen and let you go roll with it.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, brother, the Matrix is the program or the trap, right? We call it in the hood, we call it the trap, right? And we make songs about it, right? Well, if it's a trap, then that means it was set by somebody that has more power than you, and they put the things in the trap that you like to entice you so that you get caught up. And that's what our people, that's not just our people, not just black people, but the world of human beings have been deceived and robbed of the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self. So they're caught in a matrix of deception, right? And it's not just one lie, right? So the enemy didn't tell, oh, well, we're going to lie and just say Jesus was white. That's just one lie. We're going to lie and say that, you know, there's an Easter bunny, right? It's a rabbit that lays chicken eggs, right? Or we're going to lie and say it is a Santa Claus. They didn't just tell one lie, right? And they didn't just tell lies in religion. They told lies in everything. So in the history, in the religion, in the society, in the politics, in the economics, right? So the human being is caught up in a matrix of lies, a matrix of falsehood. So we know that in the scriptures, falsehood represents darkness, right? And truth is represented by light. And so the darkness, if you turn the lights off in wherever you are, and when you turn the light back on, the darkness doesn't have any power to resist the light. The
Right.
darkness only has power when light is not present. So if darkness only has power when light is not present, then what is the greatest threat to a world that is built on darkness, or a world that is built on lies? The
Beautiful,
greatest
brother.
threat is not a gun. I know some of you, brother, you got to get a gun. You got to exercise your Second Amendment rights, and this is threatening the power structure because you got a gun. I'm sorry. No, it's not. Or some of you think, man, if I roll a fat blunt and smoke it, but see, they don't want, because see, Brother Muhammad, what you don't understand, see, brother, when I hit this, then all new worlds open up, right? So you think that you challenging white supremacy by smoking a blunt. I'm sorry. That's not dispelling the lies and the falsehood. The gun is not a threat. The weed is not a threat, right? You getting a lot of money that the enemy prints and then doing nothing with it. That's not a threat. All you got to do is look at our brother P. Diddy. He has a lot of money, but that didn't stop him from becoming the target of the enemy. And so many people, there's so many examples of that. Or that doesn't stop us from falling victim to our own weaknesses. You understand what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
if the gun is not a threat, if the weed is not a threat, if you jumping up and down and doing backflips in church and praising white Jesus is not a threat, if you getting a whole bunch of money and don't know what to do with it, is not a threat. If you being a GD or a BD or a vice lord or a four corner hustler or a crip or a blood is not a threat. Then what is the greatest threat to a world that is built on lies? The greatest threat is for somebody to come and tell the truth. The greatest threat to the darkness is the light. And the greatest threat to a world built on lies is when someone tells the truth. So now here's the question.
Right.
Who is courageous enough to tell the truth in a world that is built on lies? And most people are not. So now when we're looking at this world built on lies, Satan's world, if God loves us and wants us to follow him, and he knows that the world is built on lies, then God is required, God is duty bound, right? To send somebody to do what? To tell us the truth, to give us a chance to either go with the truth or stay with the falsehood. That's a requirement if God allowed the world to be filled with falsehood. So, okay. So now this is why God raises prophets and messengers. But when you look at the history of the prophets and messengers, they only went to a certain area. They didn't go all over the world. They were in their little area, right? And they taught their people, right? And they became a sign of the one that would come at the end. And the one that would come at the end, as the Bible says, would lead you into all truth, right? So now, and this is why we say, brothers and sisters, that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad are the men that God raised today that is leading the world to all truth. How do you know? Because all you have to do is mention the minister's name, name, and everybody's losing their mind. Barack Obama took a picture with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And when they saw the picture of Barack Obama and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, people lost their mind. Now, I could take a picture with anybody. I could take a picture with Trump, right? I'm just using him as an example. I could take a picture with the Bishop, Don Juan, right? I could take a picture with with the brothers on the block. It don't matter.
Right.
Nobody is gonna get upset because I took a picture. If the picture of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Barack Obama would have came out before the election, Barack Obama would not have been elected president. Now, brother, you can't take no picture with nobody. I can take a picture with Diddy, with all the trouble that our brother is in. I can take a picture with him right now. And that's not going to affect me either way. But you mean I can't take a picture with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Right.
And the world of falsehood not get upset? That should let you know that this is the man that is leading us into all truth, because the world of falsehood, anytime he opens his mouth, they completely lose their mind. So the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is the man that God raised to deliver us from the trap and deliver us from the matrix with the truth that's coming out of his mouth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that, brings us back to when they were looking for Neo.
Right.
They were, just like the government of the United States and the COINTELPRO program
Right.
was
They were
looking
looking
for the rise of
right.
this Black Messiah figure. Give us an understanding, and I know what you're talking about as far as the minister and his influence and their fear of his influence because of the truth, but help us to really understand this Messiah figure, because this Messiah figure is just not like any other type of
Right.
leader.
So, and I'll start with the spiritual, and then I'll go to what J. Edgar Hoover was talking about. So this person in the Bible, and not just in the Bible, in just religious literature, period, this Messiah, it's a Hebrew word, right? That means one who is anointed, right? And when you read the writings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, he says that it means one who is wiped over with something such as oil, which is how they anointed you if you read the Old Testament. And it means a world traveler, right? So when we look at this Messiah, the Messiah is a deliverer, right? The Messiah is the one that God raises up at the end of the world of Satan to deliver the people from Satan's grip. So the Jewish people are looking for the Messiah. They don't believe that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was the Messiah, was that deliverer, right? The Christians who believe that the man 2,000 years ago was the Messiah, they're waiting for him to come back, right? So they believe he was the Messiah, and they're waiting for him to come back. And he's been gone for 2,000 years, right? The Muslims believe in Jesus of 2,000 years ago, right? And they also believe but let me say this, that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was a prophet, right? The Muslim would not say that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was God incarnate or God come on earth. A Muslim wouldn't say that, or the Son of God in the way that they understand it, right? But the Muslims believe in Jesus, right? And the Muslims believe that the Messiah and the Mahdi will be together at the end of the world of Satan. And I'm only bringing this up because all of the world's major religions believe that someone is coming back to deliver the people from the world of Satan. Now, we say, we boldly say with no fear that the one that everybody is looking for has already made himself known. Master Farad Muhammad, the teacher of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, we believe and we know that he's God in person. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad he called himself the messenger, but he's so much more than that. We know that he is the Messiah and the exalted Christ. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is also a Messiah. And you may say, brother, I thought it was going to be just one Messiah. But if you read the scriptures closely, my brothers and sisters, then you'll see that there are two. And that's a conversation for another day, but just to put it out there.
Right.
But it's not like it's because we're looking at a man that has a function and another man can come and do the same function that man did. So it's not like we didn't just have one president. We've had a lot of presidents, right? And they came, they did their function, and they all carry what title? Barack Obama is not sitting in the seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not sitting in the seat, but they still call him what? They still call him President Obama because he was in the seat. George Bush Jr. is not sitting in the seat, but they still call him by the title because he was in the what? He was in the seat. So don't get it twisted that if you perform the function, then you can't carry the title. So don't think, oh, well, we putting something on the minister that shouldn't be on him. All you got to do is look at this man's work, and his work bears witness to who he is. But now that's from the scriptural side. But the government in the COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover,
right,
who said that the greatest threat to the security of the United States is Negro unity. This is J. Edgar Hoover, right? J. Edgar Hoover, who was a Shriner, meaning he was a 33rd degree Mason and became a Shriner, right? J. Edgar Hoover in the FBI files in COINTELPRO said that they're looking for a Messiah that could unify and electrify the Black movement. Then they started naming people that they thought would be in that category. They said, well, Malcolm X, he's a martyr of the movement. He could have been the Messiah of the movement, but he's a martyr of the movement. Then they said Martin Luther King. He said the only way he would become, listen to the FBI, the only way he could become the Messiah of the movement is to abandon his white liberal philosophy. That's the FBI. So the FBI knew that if you rolling with these white liberals, you can't even get in this category to unify and electrify the Black movement, right? Okay. Then they said Stokely Carmichael, right? And then they said Elijah Muhammad, right? Are all contenders. But they said, Elijah Muhammad is a little old, right? But, Allah is the best of planners, brother, And then if you read the FBI file a little bit further, there's 4 things. I don't know if I can remember all 4. I'll try my best.
Right.
That they said that this Messiah, right? This Messiah that would unify and electrify the Black movement. One of the things they said that we can't let this Messiah do was to bring all of the Black groups together. Not that they had to be one group, but them working together for one cause. So this Messiah, this one that the government is talking about, the one threat would be to be able to bring these Black groups together, right?
Right.
That's one. Another threat, if I remember correctly, was to gain the respectability, and I don't know if they said middle-class Blacks, but a certain group, right? Because if you remember at this time, the revolutionary spirit, like the middle-class Black people was just looking for a job, They were like, look, we trying to get with these white people, y'all done protested, we trying to get in there. So the middle-class Blacks were not necessarily the ones that were protesting, even though they benefited from the ones that were. It was the poor, as it was in every revolution, right? And then one of the other things they said is that this Messiah would be able to connect with young people, right?
Right.
And there's one more that I can't remember, but there were 4 things that the FBI said that this Messiah, this Messiah that would electrify the Black movement would do. Oh, the other one was to be able to connect the Black struggle of America to the Black struggle in Africa.
Right.
So now, those are the 4 things that the FBI said in COINTELPRO that if this Black Messiah or this Messiah would do, that this person would be a threat to the government, and this would let us know that this man is the Messiah of the Black movement. That's the FBI.
Right.
So now I want you to look at the work of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and ask yourself the question, has the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan done all 4 of those things and more that the FBI said. Okay, one, bring all the groups together. The black groups work for a common cause. If you remember in 2005, we had the Millions More movement, right? And in
Yeah.
the Millions More movement, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan appealed. He wrote letters to all the black leaders, and he had been trying to do it, but it all came together in 2005, where he was working with these various organizations to help do what? To help move black people forward. When we worked with the NAACP, the enemy got upset. Why? Because they're looking in the FBI file and seeing what they said
We'll bring you
50
on as
years
soon
ago.
as he
They're
finishes up
seeing it
this
being made
comment.
manifest. You with me? So that's one, bringing the black groups together. Two, being respectability to the public. There is no leader, black leader in America. Even if you don't like the minister, you got to respect him.
Right.
Even if you don't like him, right? Which many don't, because he tells the truth. They respect him, right? You've seen him on every television show, on all those interviews, right? And in every interview that he did, the interviewers, you could see the respect that they had and have for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, right?
Absolutely.
And every time he goes in the public, he never fails to represent us in the best manner. Every time. Okay. So you don't hear anything about him doing drugs, any crazy stuff. You don't hear about none of that, right? So he checks that box, right? The next thing is connecting with young people. Well, there's no black leader in the last 40 years that has been able to connect with young people better than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Many of us who are in the Nation of Islam right now, we came in the nation because the minister came to our college campus. And when he came to our college campus and spoke, then thousands of young black people came in the Nation of Islam to follow the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's just a fact. So now that is this Messiah figure that the FBI talks about in their files, connecting with young people. So he checks that box. And then the last one that they said is that this Messiah figure would be able to build relationships with countries in Africa and all over the world. There's only one American leader, one black leader in America that can go to any country in Africa and be treated like a head of state. There's only one leader in America that can go to any country in the Muslim world and be treated like a head of state, and that's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So not only is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on the spiritual side, when we read Bible and Holy Quran and we read what the Messiah would do, that he fulfills what the Messiah would do spiritually.
Right.
But even the FBI files, when they said that a black Messiah could unify and electrify the black movement, and they had 4 things that this black Messiah would do, he checks all of those boxes too. So on the spiritual as well as from the FBI, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan checks the box.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me bring in Student Minister Donell and see if he wants to go any further into that, and then we'll ask some more questions about that. Let me bring him in. He's at a restaurant, so it might be some background noise,
that's
but
not a
let's see
problem.
what's going on.
We ain't got to worry about no
Assalamu
tech
alaikum,
because
brother
that's all
Student
in
Minister
the
Donell.
group chat.
I don't know if he's. Assalamu alaikum, sir. I'll bring him back in a couple of seconds and see if he's ready.
Yes, sir.
So we are looking at agents that we look in the matrix, right? And some of the agents look just like normal people. They look like you and I. You know what I mean? And they're able to, infiltrate. But can you talk a little bit about how that might be somewhat synonymous with ourselves, and not so much as an agent? When I'm talking about somebody, you could talk about those who come in as moles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can also talk about that agent within self, right?
Right.
That threatens our own salvation.
Well, brother, enemy on the outside can't do anything unless there's a weakness on the inside. So the human body, there's germs already in the air, right? There's germs everywhere. The question is, if we're surrounded by germs, then why aren't we constantly sick, right? And it is because that when the germs from the outside come on the inside, when we're healthy, then there's a mechanism on the inside to fight what came from the outside, right? So now, but when the mechanism on the inside is weakened, how do you weaken the immune system? Well, in the Black community, we love to drink Kool-Aid with a whole bunch of sugar at the bottom, right? If in our community, if you can't see the sugar at the bottom of the Kool-Aid, it's not Kool-Aid. I have to be able to see a thick thing of sugar, right? And then I gotta see it first. Then I'm gonna start stirring it up. But I gotta see it. If I don't see it, it's not enough sugar in that Kool-Aid, right? So now when we digest the white sugar, right? Or the white bread, right? The Wonder Bread, right? Or we eat candy or whatever. We eat a lot of pork, right? We eat 5 times a day, right? Now, because of what we put on the inside, now the inside is becoming weaker to what's on the outside. What's on the outside has always been there. It's always been there. It didn't just appear. But the difference is the inside is weaker, so the inside can no longer resist what's on the outside, and we get sick. And that sickness comes in different forms. Sometimes it's a sickness that we can overcome, right? And sometimes it's a sickness that will end our life, and sometimes it's different forms of, multiple forms of sickness. But the weakness started on the inside. So now it is the same with the body as it is with the spiritual body. It could be the Nation of Islam. It could be an organization that's trying to help our people, right?
Right.
The enemy who does not want the rise of Black people, they are going to look for a weakness on the inside. Because as long as you're strong on the inside, then the enemy on the outside really can't do anything with you, right? They can come against you, but they will not be successful because you're strong on the inside. And the enemy understands that. This is why J. Edgar Hoover, and it's not just J. Edgar Hoover, we use him because we mention him because we have 40 years of FBI files that we can look at to prove everything that we're saying. But if you think that COINTELPRO stopped because J. Edgar Hoover died, then you don't really understand the nature of the enemy that we're dealing with. The enemy is so much more sophisticated now than they were at the time of J. Edgar Hoover, and they still are doing the same tricks now as they did then. But the enemy uses those on the inside to give them a way in to destroy an organization or a group or whatever the case may be. And sometimes, brother, so that's with the organization, but then, with ourselves, right? So how do we get to this point, right? How do you get to be a person who was strong in the nation or in the movement, right? And then all of a sudden you get weak, right? What happens, right? It's because something happens on the inside that affects the person on the outside. And we start to doubt, we start to fall into what is hypocrisy. And those seeds of doubt, what happens? Whenever a seed is planted, if it's watered, then it starts to grow. And the doubt becomes bigger and bigger. And then, brother, we off to something else. And we become, in what you are saying, an agent. But where did it start? It started from the inside, of us as an individual. So all of these things we have to be on guard for, especially those of us who are walking with the man of God. Ask yourself the question, brothers and sisters, how could the disciples who walked with Jesus all those years and saw the miracles that he performed all of those years, How could these people who witnessed the transfiguration, right? Witnessed the water into wine, witnessed him healing the man born blind, witnessed him raising Lazarus from the dead. How can you, after witnessing and seeing and hearing the arguments between him and the Jews and seeing him being victorious in all of those arguments, right? How could you witness him casting out devils? How could you witness him giving you the power to cast out devils and you cast them out with the power that he gave you? How could you witness all of that? And then as soon as trouble came, you ran away. How could that happen? The only way that that could happen is if along that journey with Jesus, there was always doubt present. And it comes out in the conversations in the Bible that Jesus had with he has with his disciples. But the only way they could run and leave him is because they entertained doubt somewhere along the way. And Jesus was on the cross and all the disciples except John were gone. So we have to be on guard against doubt, and that's within self. And then, we have to be on guard against the enemy when you're in a group or an organization or a nation. Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
All right.
My brother, thank you so much for once again honoring us with your presence and sharing with us the wisdom, the inspiration of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, set by the example of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and set by the example of the inspiration of that revelation manifested in yourself, in your work, and in your representation of our nation. I am thankful to Allah to know you as my brother, as my friend, and a fellow student in this work.
Yes, sir.
I just want to know, I've heard everything you said, I've listened intently, but I just want to know, how do I get unplugged from the matrix, brother? They keep on pulling me back, plugging me back in. I know the lamb chop is not real.
Right.
But they paint such a beautiful picture, man. How do I get unplugged? Finally.
Well, brother,
Yes,
the only way that you can get unplugged from the matrix
I said I'll mute you while he answers.
Okay. The only way that we can get unplugged with the matrix is we have to be connected to the source. If we're not connected to the source, then we're going to stay plugged in, right? And everybody has to make their own decision about what they want to do. So we brought it up earlier, brother Minister Donell, before you got on. If you remember in the movie, there was the red pill and the blue pill, and that represents the decision that you have to make. Do you want to walk down the path of freedom, justice, and equality, or do you want to walk down the path of slavery, suffering, and death? And if you want to walk down the path of freedom and justice and equality, and you make that decision, you have to understand that the enemy is always going to come back, the enemy within self and the enemy without, to try to reconnect you. How, brother Abdul? How can they reconnect me to the matrix? Okay. When let's say we not saying our prayers, right? It's easy to get reconnected to the matrix. We watch excessive television. It's easy to get reconnected to the matrix. We out in the club instead of being out at the mosque, right? It's easy to get reconnected to the matrix. Now that they legalized gambling with the apps now, right? It's easy to get reconnected to the matrix, right? You go out in the street and you get rejected 2 or 3 times by our poor and suffering people, and you all in your feelings. And now you don't want to go out in the street after our people. It's very easy. The enemy makes it easy to get reconnected and to stay connected. You got it right in your hand. It's called a cell phone. And the cell phone makes it easy for you to get reconnected. Let me prove it to you. Like all my people that's a little bit older, all of y'all that's a little bit older know that if anybody wanted to call your house, they called the house phone. Your children saying, "What's the house, daddy? What's the house phone?" All right, you don't even know, your children don't even know what that is.
Right.
Your friends called the house phone. Some of y'all mamas had a lock on the phone. A lock on the phone, yes. And when your friends called, your mother answered the phone, and your mother told them he can't talk right now and hung up the phone, right? Now, if you had a good mother like I had, she just unplugged the phone when she went to work and took the phone with her to work. And if the house caught on fire, hey, you had to figure it out. But the phone was at work with mama. So now, why am I saying this? Because today we have the a way to get reconnected back into the matrix right in our hand, right? And most of us, and when I say us, I'm talking about human beings, period. You look at us and what are we doing all day, every minute, right? Because what is the goal of Satan's world is to have you reconnected, right? But the same tool that we trying to stay connected to the matrix, we can use that tool to deliver the truth to our people. So, brothers and sisters, we have to, if you want to stay disconnected, it's a struggle to stay disconnected in a world where everybody is connected to the matrix. So we have to commit to that struggle and help one another stay disconnected by being brothers and sisters and showing love to each other.
Yes, sir. And so I want to get into, try to get an understanding of why are we going through this? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Why we read in the scriptures where it says to Abraham that his seed would be brought into a strange land among strange people and afflicted for 400 years. You know, why are we going through what we're going through? Is there an end game to all of this?
Absolutely, my brother. I would say, and brother, with all that we've suffered, and not just we Black people, we've suffered tremendously, and more than others. But with what the world of human beings have suffered, we can ask the question, why would God allow all of this? And a lot of people like to blame God. Well, if God was good, but we're not doing no good in our life, right? But then we want to blame God for everything that goes wrong. But brother, when you want to make something perfect, how does that process look? When you want to make something perfect, how does that process look?
Mm-hmm.
If you go, let me ask you this question. What kind of car do you drive?
I drive what is that? A Chevy Trailblazer.
Chevy Trailblazer. How many times do you think they crashed that car up into a wall to see if that car was safe?
I'm hoping they crashed it a few times at least.
And, okay, you hoping, right?
Right.
That they crashed it, right? So that process of making that, and the car is not perfect, it's just good enough to get you around where you safe, right? But the process of refining the automobile, right, and the cars that we drive over these last 100 years has been a very messy process, right?
Right.
There was a time where cars didn't have seatbelts. Imagine that, right? And people would drive it, and when they would crash, they would go through the windshield. I don't know how many people died going through the windshield before somebody said, well, let's put a seatbelt in the car to at least keep them strapped to the car. But people died so that we could benefit from that addition. You understand, right? There was a time where the glass on the window, passengers or your driver's side window, was plate glass, right? And when these accidents would happen, the plate glass would cut you and injure you or kill you, right? So then somebody got the idea that we're just going to make it where it just crumbles up into little bitty pieces so that people won't die if there's an accident. But how many people died with glass getting stuck in their neck or in their, like, how many? I don't know the number, but I know it was some, right? Then this windshield, right? Now I'm talking to my brothers and sisters in the hood. Y'all like jumping on cars, right? And when you jump on the windshield, notice the glass doesn't just break all the way through, because there is like this thick plastic, I'm assuming, or that keeps the windshield in place if it's hit. Why? Because the windshield would break and cut people up. And I don't know how many people died before they came up with the idea to put this here to protect human life. The question now is, with all of these things that have happened, right? With all, like, now we're old enough to remember where there was no airbag in the car. I mean, and you didn't have to put your seatbelt on, right? And when your mother was hit the brakes, she was the seatbelt, right? If you remember, right? But there was no airbag in the car. But all of these things were added to the car after a lot of people died, right? Because those things were not present. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now the current generation of people, we are the beneficiaries of the pain of the previous generations of people who drove cars. You understand what I'm saying? Right. We're the beneficiaries. Where now, rather than waiting for you to get in the car and get in the accident, now they put dummies in the car, right? And crash it just to see what's going to happen. You understand what I'm saying? But all of that improvement and that pathway towards perfection came on a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, right? Right. And every industry, I'm just talking about cars, right? Every industry, if we look at it, we talk about trains, it's the same thing, right? If we talk about airplanes, it's the same thing, right? If we talk about buildings, it's the same thing, right? If we talk about boats and yachts and ships, it's the same thing. So the improvement of the thing that we're looking at, in this case, a car, the improvement of it and to make it better for human beings was born on a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, was put in the mind of someone else to do something to alleviate this pain and suffering. I hope y'all are following me. You follow me?
Right.
So now, if we can see that with the automobile, right? And we see the more that we go through this process, the better the automobile becomes and gets, right? So now, what about, that's a car or a building or a boat or a plane. What about the human being? If we're talking about the perfection of a car comes from the pain and suffering of human beings, then what about the perfection of the human being, which is the greatest thing in the universe? What would the perfection of the human being be born on? Just like everything else, pain and suffering. So when we ask about, why does God allow pain? Why does God allow suffering? God allows pain and suffering to we look at God as somebody who is spooky, as opposed to looking at God like a scientist. I hope y'all are listening.
Yes, sir.
When the car crashes or the plane crashes, what happens? Do they just get out there and say, "Oh God, why did you let this plane crash?" Absolutely not. They go and pick up all the pieces, right? And they research all the pieces to figure out why this plane crashed. They do what scientists do. Why? To make a better plane, to save life, to perfect that which they made. Well, if they will do that for a plane or a car or a building or a boat, what must God do to perfect the human being?
Good question.
And that's the process that we're in right now, where God is perfecting the human being.
Right.
And so I'm hoping I answered your question with that
No, no,
example.
no. I mean, I think that you did answer the question. I mean, but it takes, it may take a little bit more time to really get into it, but I definitely, extracted out of that, what you were talking about. And one of those elements to perfection is that we got to go through some pain.
Absolutely. Pain is part of the process, right? There's a
Right.
book that's called Pain, The Gift Nobody Wants,
Right.
which I would just say gives a good perspective on the necessity of pain. If we didn't
Hmm.
have pain, then pain lets you know what the limits are, right? I grab the
Right.
pot, it's hot. That lets me know what the limits are, right? I
Hmm.
disrespect my mother, I get slapped in the mouth, right? That lets me know what the limits are, right? So
Right.
pain is necessary to let the human being know what the limits are. And when there is no pain, then there are no limits. You understand what
Right.
I'm saying? And then
Hmm.
we become something other than what God wants us to be. So pain is always used by God. As
Yeah.
sad as it is, as painful as it is, remember God is a scientist. So what is he
Right.
doing? He's working towards the perfection of the human being.
Right, right. And just to say just a little bit more, that the pain that we have been through as black people and the pain that the children of Israel went through, this is one of the reasons why we're taught that they are looking for a Messiah figure, is because out of this pain, the birth of one to to resolve that issue
Right.
that is causing the pain would be born. And they know
Absolutely.
that, like you said.
And yeah, and the root of that, because you brought a good point, the root of that is the imperfection that's in the human being. So how does God eliminate, right? And the most honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about how God would perform an operation on the nation to bring the brown germ or the weaker side of the original man, to eliminate it, right? And that's the process that we're going through right now, which that process leads to the perfection of man. But if you don't bring it out, then how can you deal with it? You have to
Right.
bring it out. You have to manifest it so that it can be dealt with.
Yeah. And this would be what we would look at in the movie as the agents,
Right.
you know, being brought out. Yeah, brought out. So I think as we go ahead and wrap this whole thing up, um, we want to look at one of the things I guess that they didn't conclude in the Matrix was what we're talking about with the hereafter or the promised land. We're talking about the end of Satan's world. Tell us a little bit about, help us to get an understanding of this hereafter and this promised land. Is this in another dimension as some might think, or is it will we see, the dead rising up out of the earth, or
Well,
what is
brother,
this hereafter?
uh, if we were going to see some dead people, we would have seen them already, and most of us, even though we would say, somebody's in heaven, we're not trying to rush to go see them, and if they are there, they're not trying to rush to come back to see us. We've been, like I talked in the beginning, there's so many lies that we've been told. And that's one of them, that, we would get our reward when we died, right? But the very people that told us that we would get our reward in the sky after we died, we're getting their reward on earth while they were alive. White people are not waiting to go somewhere to be in heaven. They are producing a heaven on earth while they live and passing that heaven down to their children. We should do the same thing. So this
Absolutely.
hereafter that the Holy Quran talks about and the Bible talks about, many people make the mistake, even our Muslim brothers who we love dearly, they make the mistake of thinking that this is the place in the sky beyond the sun, moon, and stars. And the Holy Quran is very clear that there will be gardens wherein rivers flow, right? That
Mm.
you will be wearing silk, thick brocade with gold, right? That you be eating grapes. It's like that's not in the sky. That's not in some trans-dimensional place, right? That's right here on earth when the power of Satan is removed, right? So every time you turn on your television, you're looking at Satan's power every day being diminished more and more.
Right.
All of you who are watching, who are in the Nation of Islam, when the most honorable Elijah Muhammad stood up in 1931 and declared the fall of America, we looked at him like a ham and cheese sandwich.
Right.
Now, here we are in 2024, and the fall of America is common language among white people.
Yes,
white
it is.
people are saying that this country is over. It's a wrap. America's done. Like, so what are we talking about? But when God raises the messenger, he always gives you advance notice of what he's going to do, right? But it's so clear now that the common man is saying that we're at the end of the American empire, that America is falling, America's collapsing, America is losing friendship all over the world. If you read Fall of America, everything that he said would happen is happening. The question is, once this power that we call America is no longer in place, what is going to replace it? And some of you will say, well, China, no.
Right.
India, no. These other countries, no. Those powers are not going to replace this power. The Mahdi is a man that comes to set down every tyrant and oppressor. So how could China and all of these other countries replace America when they're just as oppressive as America? So they're not going to be the power in the earth. Allah is going to destroy the power of all the tyrants, and he is going to be the power in the earth. So that is what is represented by the fall of America. Like I started out, two things can occupy the same place at the same time. So if Satan is present and he runs the world, and we know this, all you have to do is open your eyes, turn on your television, look at YouTube or Twitter, or any of these social media apps. This is Satan's world. But now if Satan's power is removed, the question is, who is going to fill that space? And that's the world that God is bringing in, that is called the kingdom of God. That is what's going to replace Satan's world. And this is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan represents.
This is the last question. So to those who are listening, you know, how can we come out of her? How can we save ourselves from this fall, as you're talking about?
That's real easy. All you have to do is go to the mosque in your city. You can go on NOI.org. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has numerous videos on YouTube, all over social media. But join on to your local mosque. See, there has to be a transaction, right, between you and God, right? In the Holy Quran, it calls it a bargain, right? That you give your life as a bargain, and then God gives you the whole world, in so many words in the Holy Quran. So now you have to, if you want to walk down this road, right, of helping to usher in God's kingdom, then you have to enter an exchange with God, right? And that means you have to give up something in order to get something, right? And what is God asking us to give up? He's asking us to give up the foolishness of the world,
right,
to accept his kingdom. He's asking you to give up the cigarettes. They're killing you anyway. Give up the pork, give up the alcohol, right? So he can give you knowledge so that you can become an example for your people, right? And bring them to the very truth that raised you up. So if you want to learn more about what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches and Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then go to your local mosque in your city. Go to NOI.org. We have a weekly broadcast where Minister Ishmael from Chicago speaks weekly to the nation and to the world.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you so
Yes, sir.
much. I'm gonna see if brother student minister wants to give us some final words as we close out. All right,
Yes,
brother student
sir.
minister,
I will simply
go
say
right
this,
ahead.
Brother Stephen. I will simply say this, but first of all, thank you again, brother, for accepting the invitation
Yes, sir.
to share with us, I believe, really a national perspective from a spot that is our national house is at. And even though all of us have exposure to the revelation from that national house, there's still nothing like living there, communicating with those who are responsible for getting that message out nationwide and worldwide. And as a result of your presence there, living there, teaching there, working there, God has also blessed you with a perspective that is not only unique to you, but it gives you the ability, I believe, by Allah's grace, to help all of us see the teaching in all of its multifacetedness, but more importantly, see it from where we are and how we can connect to the larger revelation that comes from God Himself through His servant and Messiah, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So thank you, and Brother Stephen, thank you
Thank
for
you, brother.
having the spirit, the courage, the audacity to set up a multimedia production company exclusively dedicated to getting out the truth of God's Messiah and covering all of the beautiful activities in the black community that are positive and uplift our people and get them closer to what Allah revealed to one of our own, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Thank you both.
Thank you,
Yes,
my
sir.
brother.
Thank you, brother minister. All right, and we'll
Praise be
go
to God.
ahead. All right, thank you. And brother student minister, thank you so much, brother, for coming on here
Yes, sir.
and to help us to understand that we are in a matrix.
Right.
We're in this matrix of white supremacy. And as you've so eloquently explained to us, it's one that's imploding.
Right. Absolutely.
It's imploding, and we need to, and we are the people who the scriptures have written about, that God would make a new heaven and a new kingdom out of us. So thank you,
That's right.
brother. And any last words before we close out
But
that
I,
you would like to share?
well, brother, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I definitely appreciate the invitation. I would love to come back to share with our brothers and sisters and just encourage everybody to listen to the Savior's Day address of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan from February, pardon me, of this year, because everything that he said in Savior's Day is manifesting itself in the world right now. And to all of my brothers and sisters, this man is the guide, and we need to listen to him and heed his words and help him in this mission of giving life to the dead. So, yes, sir, I want to thank you for that. And thank your viewers as well. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And I'll go ahead and close this on out. And so I want to just thank everyone for tuning in to this powerful conversation, and come back every week at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we talk about the life giving teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we want you to um, go and get you a subscription to the Final Call newspaper, because one of the things that Brother Abdul was talking about is their censorship of the truth. And believe it or not, right now we can go onto YouTube and watch the videos, but there's going to come a time where they're going to shut all of that down, because the truth, as the brother said, is like the light, and they can't they can't stop the light because the light is too powerful. So, with that, God bless you and your family with the light of truth and understanding as I greet you or I leave you as I greeted you in the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. All right. And we'll get this.